From October 19th to the 21st, El Baradei convened in Vienna what was supposed to be a technical meeting to work out the details of the Tehran research reactor deal that had been agreed in principle in Geneva. He invited Iran, Russia, France, and the United States. The Iranians claimed no agreement had been reached in Geneva, and as a result, little progress was made. Finally, on the third day, El Baradei presented his own text. It closely reflected what all parties except Iran thought had been agreed more than 2 weeks earlier. 1,200 kilos of Iranian 3.5% enriched uranium, over 75% of Iran's stockpile, would be shipped to Russia before January 15, 2010. Russia would further enrich the uranium to 19.75%, the level required to operate the TRR. Russia would then ship the material to France and perhaps another country to fabricate the specially configured fuel assemblies. Finally, the assemblies would be sent to Iran by December 2010, in time to ensure the uninterrupted operation of the reactor. In my view, in the view of most observers, this was a win-win arrangement. Iran had requested the IAEA's assistance in acquiring the fuel because it doesn't currently have the capability to fabricate TRR fuel on its own. The deal would guarantee fresh fuel for the reactor before current fuel supplies run out at the end of next year. For the other parties, the deal would significantly draw down the stock of enriched uranium that could be diverted to a nuclear weapons program if Iran decided to do so. It would therefore reduce the anxiety of countries in the Middle East, which had become increasingly concerned by Iran's accumulation of enriched uranium. It would not by any means be a solution to the Iran nuclear problem, but because Iran would probably take about a year to replenish its stocks, it would buy time for diplomacy to resolve the more fundamental nuclear issue. In short, it would be a modest but worthwhile humanitarian and confidence-building measure. Director General El Baradei gave the parties 2 days to confirm their acceptance of the text. Russia, France, and the United States quickly responded that they supported the draft agreement. Iran has still not provided a final formal response, although what we've heard so far has been not very encouraging. News reports suggest that instead of shipping its enriched uranium to Russia right away, Iran may insist on keeping the uranium on its territory until it receives fuel assemblies from abroad. That, of course, would defeat the confidence-building value of the arrangement and is a non-starter. The TRR deal is an opportunity for Iran to start restoring confidence regarding the nature of its nuclear program and to demonstrate that it's prepared to engage seriously in a diplomatic process. We hope it takes advantage of this opportunity. If it doesn't, the international community will draw its own conclusions. The TRR issue is likely to be a focus of attention at the IAEA board meeting that will be held Thanksgiving week. The board will also be interested in the Director General's report on the agency's visit to the Qom enrichment site in late October. The report will be available at the end of next week and is likely to address the question of whether Iran failed to meet its obligation to notify the IAEA in a timely way of its decision to build the facility. It will also address Iran's continuing failure to cooperate with the IAEA's investigation of the possible military dimensions of its nuclear program, including strong evidence that it has done work on a missile warhead for delivering nuclear weapons. The next weeks and months will be a critical test of Iran's intentions. The P5+1 countries approach this period more unified than they've been in several years, while the Iranians approach it more isolated and under greater pressure than they felt for a long time. We have seen progressive tightening of UN sanctions under Resolutions 1737, 1747, and 1803. Businesses and banks are increasingly reluctant to deal with the Iranian financial and other institutions that have facilitated Iran's nuclear and missile programs. The European Union has adopted measures to limit the granting of export credits. And so for Iran, the cost of doing business is going up. We've also been reaching out to our regional partners to demonstrate our support for their security in the face of a growing Iranian threat, and to demonstrate that any Iranian attempt to use a nuclear weapons capability to exercise hegemony in the region would be counterproductive. Our engagement policy, including the TRR initiative, has begun to pay dividends in terms of unifying the P5+1 countries and bringing together a broader coalition. Russia and China, especially the former, have played important roles in encouraging Iran to accept the TRR deal and cooperate with the IAEA. In an interview last week in Der Spiegel, President Medvedev said that if there's no forward movement by Iran, he would not rule out further sanctions. And the exposure of the covert enrichment site at Qom has done further damage to Iran's credibility, even among countries habitually inclined to support a non-aligned colleague. So with the playing field tilting somewhat in our direction, we're ready to engage and test Iran's intentions. We hope Iran will respond positively and promptly, because we're not prepared to participate in an open-ended negotiation in which Iran plays for time as its nuclear program advances. But if Iran is not serious about pursuing the engagement track and addressing the international community's concerns about its nuclear program, we are better positioned than we've been for quite some time to lead the international community down the other track. The choice is Iran's to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karim?
Thank you very much to the Middle East Institute for inviting me. As Robin mentioned, my job today is to describe the view from Tehran. And if my presentation sounds incoherent, then I've given you an accurate rendition of Iranian political culture today. I'd like to probe two questions. The first is, how did we get where we are now? And the second is where we go from here. And it's probably apropos this week that I start my presentation in 1989, not with the fall of the Berlin Wall, but with the death of Ayatollah Khomeini. After the death of Ayatollah Khomeini, the father of the Islamic Revolution, the custodianship of the Islamic Republic was left to two individuals. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who became kind of the main ideologue of the revolution. He was the individual who was going to remain loyal to the ideals of the 1979 revolution. And the second was Hashemi Rafsanjani, who was the dealer to Khamenei's ideologue, kind of the more pragmatic, wily politician. And the first decade of their tenure together, they were fairly complementary. Khamenei was supreme leader, Rafsanjani was president, and they were kind of equals in terms of their power status. And what we saw the second decade of their tenure together was that the differences between them began to grow more pronounced. And we saw in 2005, with the election of Ahmadinejad, that Khamenei dealt a very severe blow to Rafsanjani. Khamenei's power vis-a-vis Rafsanjani had increased substantially. And I think what we saw with the last elections, these last elections, June 12, 2009, was that any remaining moderates and pragmatists that were part of the Iranian power structure have essentially been purged from the system.